You sent me some seriously fascinating stuff, excerpts from Dante's Inferno. This is going to be a wild ride.
Oh, I'm always up for deep dive into the classics, especially when they're as rich with imagery and symbolism as Dante's work. What particularly caught your eye?
I am fascinated by the journey itself. Dante's descent into hell. He seems so lost and afraid. Yet he's also determined to see it all. Right from the beginning, we find him literally falling into darkness. It's all so dramatic.
It's more than dramatic, it's symbolic. His descent into hell is a journey into the depths of human sin, mirroring our own internal struggles. He's not just physically moving, he's going through a mental and spiritual transformation. And you're right, it's incredibly dramatic. That sense of falling into darkness is so powerful.
And then he encounters this creature, a beast that seems to symbolize his fear, this beast without peace. It's so unsettling.
That's the lion, representing violence and greed. It pushes Dante back towards the darkness where the sun is silent. He's being pulled away from the light of reason and virtue.
He's really struggling. But then there's this sudden shift. This shadowy figure appears. It's Virgil, the poet. He's like Dante's guide through this whole ordeal.
Exactly. Virgil represents reason and human knowledge, and his presence is crucial for Dante's journey. He leads him to the gateway of hell, a place where, as Dante learns, hope is lost.
We're talking about the gates of hell with that chilling inscription. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Gives me chills just thinking about it.
That inscription, it cuts to the heart of Dante's Inferno. The idea that once you fully embrace sin, there's no coming back, there's no redemption. It's a bleak outlook, but it sets the stage for the harrowing journey ahead.
And then we get into the different circles of hell, each representing a different kind of sin. First up is limbo, where the unbaptized souls reside.
Limbo isn't a place of torture, but a kind of eternal sadness. It's a state of being cut off from God and the joy of heaven.
This is where it gets truly fascinating. Dante sees famous figures like Homer, Aristotle, and even Socrates, all in this state of eternal melancholy. What a powerful image.
The fact that these great thinkers are here in limbo is a powerful statement. Even those who achieved greatness in this life can be trapped in eternal despair if they didn't embrace faith. Dante emphasizes that there is more to life than what we can see and understand on our own. What do you think about that?
It's mind-blowing. It makes you really question what it means to live a full life.
Exactly. It's not just about intellectual or artistic achievement. It's about the soul's relationship with the divine.
Right. Okay, now we're getting into the different types of sins that get you sent to each circle.
Yeah.
And we're moving from those who are maybe not as bad off as we move down. So the second circle, this is for the sin of lust. And things are getting a bit more intense here, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Here, souls are swept up in a swirling, chaotic wind, forever representing their uncontrolled passions. Dante describes it as hurricane, wild and destructive.
It's like a constant reminder of the turmoil they experienced in life. It almost makes you feel sorry for them, but at the same time, this was their choice.
It is a tough one. And then we meet Francesca da Rimini.
Yes. Francesca, whose tragic love affair with Paolo Malatesta cost them their lives. It's a heart-wrenching story, isn't it? To be forever trapped in this whirlwind of passion.
It is. It highlights how lust, even when fueled by passion, can lead to destruction. This is where Dante's writing becomes really effective. He uses real people and their stories to make these abstract concepts come to life. It's incredibly impactful.
I always think about those stories and I think, what if Dante's descriptions were real? Like he's painting a terrifying picture of what could happen.
That's a powerful way to look at it. It's not just a story, it's a warning.
It's a warning, a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of our actions. And I think that's what makes it so powerful.
I'm really excited to see how those descriptions get even more intense as we move down to the next few circles.
Oh, they do. In the third circle, we encounter gluttony. And this is where things get truly, disgusting. We're talking freezing rain, slush, a real visceral experience.
Exactly. Souls are drenched in this freezing rain and slush, representing their insatiable appetites. It's a truly visceral depiction of the consequences of unchecked indulgence.
It almost feels like a punishment that's so fitting. You're made to feel cold and miserable because you were too concerned about your own comfort and pleasure.
Absolutely. And Dante meets Siaco, a Florentine glutton, who warns him about the fate of the city. You gotta wonder, what does that tell us about Dante's own society?
That's a great question. Dante's Inferno is not just a fantasy story. It's a commentary on his own time, a reflection of the issues he was dealing with.
You're right. It makes you think about what was going on in Florence during Dante's time, what kind of problems existed in his society, and how those problems might be reflected in hell.
It's amazing how you can look at this work of fiction and see so much of the real world in it. It's like a mirror, reflecting back the flaws and failings of humanity.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that these issues are not just limited to Dante's time. They are part of the human condition, something we continue to struggle with.
It's a powerful statement. We'll dive into that more as we continue our deep dive into Dante's Inferno. But for now, what stands out to you?
What really strikes me is how Dante uses these specific examples, these real people and stories, to illustrate these broader concepts of sin and punishment. It makes it so much more relatable and impactful.
That's it. It's not just some abstract theoretical idea. He's using real-world examples to show us what's at stake, what the consequences are, and how these sins affect our relationships with each other and with the divine.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point for us to consider as we move forward in this deep dive.
Okay, let's move on to the fourth circle, where greed reigns supreme. Imagine souls forever pushing and pulling massive weights. It's a powerful representation of their insatiable desire for material wealth.
It's a constant struggle, a torment that mirrors the endless pursuit of wealth and possessions in our world. It's a powerful image, especially considering Dante's own lifetime, which was marked by economic and political turmoil.
It almost feels like a punishment that is so fitting. You're condemned to this endless labor, pushing and pulling these heavyweights because you were consumed by your own desire for more.
Exactly. And you're right. What's amazing is that Dante is not just describing the punishment, he's also hinting at a deeper truth.
What do you mean?
Well, Dante says that God distributes wealth, not just on earth, but also in hell. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it almost feels like a cosmic balance sheet.
That's incredible. It makes you think about the bigger picture, about how our choices have consequences, not just in this life, but also in the next.
You're right. Dante's Inferno doesn't just punish sin, it highlights the interconnectedness of everything, even in the afterlife. This is a key point for the reader to consider. What does it mean for us? How do we live in balance with our desires?
So it's almost like there's this cosmic order, a balance that exists even in hell, and it's reflecting the balance or imbalance that we have created in our own lives.
Exactly. It's a really powerful idea, and it's something that's worth thinking about. How do we live in balance with our desires? How do we avoid becoming consumed by our greed?
Yeah, tough stuff.
I know. But it's really important stuff, and I think Dante is trying to make us think about these things. He's challenging us to examine our lives and to ask ourselves some difficult questions.
He certainly is, and we've just started to get into the meat of it. So we've gone from the unbaptized souls of limbo to the lustful, to the gluttons, to the hoarders, and now we're looking at the wrathful in the next circle. It's like we're moving from less severe sins to those that are more deliberate and malicious.
You're exactly right. And the fifth circle is where things really start to get dark.
Okay, let's dive into the fifth circle. This is where souls are trapped in a murky swamp, constantly fighting and attacking each other. The imagery is so vivid.
This represents the bitterness of unresolved anger and resentment. It's a constant state of conflict, mirroring the kind of violence and hatred we see in our world. Dante's imagery is so vivid here, the souls battling in this dark swamp. It's almost a physical manifestation of the rage that consumes them.
You know, I think it's a really powerful reminder that anger can be a destructive force, both within us and in society. This is something that's relevant to us even today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It shows how unchecked anger can turn us against each other and lead to violence. This is a challenge we must face in every generation.
And it's something that we can see playing out in the world today. I mean, look at all the conflict and division that's happening. It's a sobering reminder that anger can be a powerful force for destruction.
Exactly. And it's a challenge that we all need to confront. We need to find ways to manage our anger, to resolve conflict peacefully, and to build a more harmonious society.
That's a lot to think about. This is just the first part of our deep dive into Dante's Inferno. There are so many more levels to explore, so many more layers to unpack. We've barely scratched the surface. What are your thoughts?
You're right. We've just started to understand the vastness of Dante's vision.
We'll continue our deep dive in the next part. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep Dante's journey in your mind and heart. Okay, so picking up where we left off in Dante's Inferno last time. You know, it's not just about the punishments, it's about the choices that land people in those punishments in the first place.
That's right. Dante doesn't just condemn sin. He explores the motivations and the processes that lead to these choices. He delves into the psychology behind it all.
And what's fascinating is how he uses the structure of hell itself to make a point. He divides hell into 9 circles, each representing a different type of sin.
It's a fascinating framework. Each circle, as you said, represents a different category of sin, with the punishments becoming progressively more severe as Dante descends deeper into the underworld.
Like a map of human sin, a taxonomy of transgression, with each circle representing a different level of moral depravity.
You're really getting it. It's as though Dante is saying, this is how we messed up. He's giving us a roadmap of the human condition. And it's not a pretty picture.
And it's not just about good versus evil. There are gradations of sin with different consequences depending on the nature and severity of the transgression.
Exactly. And Dante's structure of hell allows him to explore these nuances, highlighting the different motivations, consequences, and punishments associated with each type of sin.
So if we're going to explore this journey through the different circles, I think it makes sense to start with the first few circles, right? Those that seem to focus on sins of incontinence, those driven by a lack of self-control.
Yes, the first 5 circles are reserved for those who succumb to their passions, their appetites, and their desires. In the first circle, limbo, we find the unbaptized and virtuous pagans, who are punished not with physical torment, but with the eternal sadness of being separated from God.
It's a kind of spiritual longing, a sense of incompleteness, representing the lack of fulfillment that comes from being cut off from the divine. It makes you wonder, how do you even exist in a state of eternal not quite?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? That sense of being forever on the edge of something but never quite reaching it.
And in the second circle, we encounter the lustful, who are swept about by a relentless wind, mirroring the uncontrolled passions that drove them in life.
The image of those souls being tossed about by the wind, unable to find peace or rest, is a powerful metaphor for the way that lust can consume and control us.
I can't help but think about those stories and think, what if Dante's descriptions were real? It's like he's painting a terrifying picture of what could happen.
That's a powerful way to look at it. It's not just a story, it's a warning.
It's a warning, a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of our actions. And I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Right, and we're just getting started. It's like Dante is laying out the progression of human sin in a way that gets increasingly dark and ultimately a lot more deliberate.
Okay, so we're in the third circle now, right? And it's the gluttons.
And this is where things get truly visceral.
Yeah.
You know, the punishments are starting to get more severe. It's almost like Dante is saying, okay, this is where we get serious about sin.
Yeah, because these aren't just people who were carried away by their passions. They're the ones who went out of their way to indulge their desires, to overeat, to drink too much, to live for pleasure.
Exactly. They're the ones who put their own desires above all else. And the punishment is almost a mirror image of their actions.
They are punished by being forced to wallow in filth and endure a constant downpour of freezing rain and hail. It's a punishment that's so fitting because it reflects the very nature of their sin. Just as they indulged in earthly pleasures to excess, they are now subjected to physical discomfort and degradation.
You're hitting on a key concept here, Contrapasso. It's like a cosmic mirror, reflecting back the nature of the sin in a tangible form.
That's a really cool way to think about it. It almost makes you feel like Dante is saying, you want to overindulge. Well, here's what that looks like in the afterlife.
You're getting it. And it shows how sin has natural consequences, even in the afterlife. It's not just an arbitrary punishment. It's a logical extension of the choices made in life.
So the third circle is about the consequences of unchecked desire, but the fourth circle moves into a different kind of sin.
The fourth circle, where greed reigns supreme.
And it's a truly powerful image. You've got souls forever pushing and pulling massive weights, representing their insatiable desire for material wealth.
It's constant struggle, a torment that mirrors the endless pursuit of wealth and possessions in our world. It's a powerful image, especially considering Dante's own lifetime, which was marked by economic and political turmoil.
It's almost like a punishment that is so fitting. You're condemned to this endless labor, pushing and pulling these heavy weights because you were consumed by your own desire for more.
Exactly. And you're right. What's amazing is that Dante is not just describing the punishment, he's also hinting at a deeper truth.
What do you mean?
Well, Dante says that God distributes wealth, not just on earth, but also in hell. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it almost feels like a cosmic balance sheet.
That's incredible. It makes you think about the bigger picture, about how our choices have consequences, not just in this life, but also in the next.
You're right. Dante's Inferno doesn't just punish sin. It highlights the interconnectedness of everything, even in the afterlife. This is a key point for the reader to consider. What does it mean for us? How do we live in balance with our desires?
So it's almost like there's this cosmic order, a balance that exists even in hell. And it's reflecting the balance or imbalance that we have created in our own lives.
Exactly. It's a really powerful idea, and it's something that's worth thinking about. How do we live in balance with our desires? How do we avoid becoming consumed by our greed?
Yeah, tough stuff.
I know. But it's really important stuff. And I think Dante is trying to make us think about these things. He's challenging us to examine our lives and to ask ourselves some difficult questions.
He certainly is. And we've just started to get into the meat of it. So we've gone from the unbaptized souls of limbo to the lustful, to the gluttons, to the hoarders. And now we're looking at the wrathful in the next circle. It's like we're moving from less severe sins to those that are more deliberate and malicious.
You're exactly right. And the fifth circle is where things really start to get dark.
Okay, let's dive into the fifth circle. This is where souls are trapped in a murky swamp, constantly fighting and attacking each other. The imagery is so vivid.
This represents the bitterness of unresolved anger and resentment. It's a constant state of conflict, mirroring the kind of violence and hatred we see in our world. Dante's imagery is so vivid here, the souls battling in this dark swamp. It's almost a physical manifestation of the rage that consumes them.
You know, I think it's a really powerful reminder that anger can be a destructive force, both within us and in society. This is something that's relevant to us even today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It shows how unchecked anger can turn us against each other and lead to violence. This is a challenge we must face in every generation.
And it's something that we can see playing out in the world today. I mean, look at all the conflict and division that's happening. It's a sobering reminder that anger can be a powerful force for destruction.
Exactly. And it's a challenge that we all need to confront. We need to find ways to manage our anger, to resolve conflict peacefully, and to build a more harmonious society.
That's a lot to think about. This is just the first part of our deep dive into Dante's Inferno. There are so many more levels to explore, so many more layers to unpack. We've barely scratched the surface. What are your thoughts?
You're right. We've just started to understand the vastness of Dante's vision. He's truly a master of using hell to tell a larger story about the human condition.
It's so compelling.
It really is. And that's why it's so important to take our time and explore each layer.
We'll continue our deep dive in the next part. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep Dante's journey in your mind and heart. You know, I've been thinking about how Dante uses the Inferno to really call out corruption and hypocrisy, especially within the church. It's pretty bold for someone writing back then.
He's not afraid to hold those in power accountable, even the highest authority in the church. He does it by placing these figures in hell, condemning them to eternal torment. It's almost like he's saying, this is what happens when you abuse your power.
And he doesn't shy away from naming names. He calls out Pope Nicholas III, who is trapped upside down with his legs burning.
It's a vivid image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It symbolizes the misuse of religious authority for personal gain. But it's not just about the church. Dante also criticizes the political factions and rivalries that were tearing Florence apart during his lifetime.
Right, like in the sixth circle where he encounters Fernanda de Uberti.
He was a prominent Ghibelline leader who opposed Dante's own Guelph faction. Their conversation is charged with political tension, reflecting the deep divisions that existed in Florentine society. It shows how Dante is using the Inferno not only to explore sin, but also to comment on the societal issues of his day.
You know, I always thought Dante was just writing about religion, but there's this whole other layer to it. It's a commentary on the corruption and power struggles of his own time.
Exactly. And it's something that resonates even today. We continue to grapple with these issues of corruption and abuse of power in various institutions. It's almost like Dante's Inferno is a timeless warning.
It is. He's saying this is what happens when we let greed and ambition consume us. And it's not just about the political and religious spheres. It's about how these flaws exist within all of us.
You're right. It's a reminder that these are not new problems. They're part of the human condition. And they have consequences, both in this life and the next.
This deep dive is really making me appreciate how Dante weaves together so many different layers of meaning within the Inferno. It's a theological exploration, a social commentary, a political critique, and a deeply personal journey all at once.
It is. And that's what makes it such a rich and complex work. Dante is drawing on a vast range of sources, from classical mythology to biblical scripture, from historical events to personal experiences to create this multifaceted masterpiece.
It's a testament to his genius that he's able to bring all these elements together into such a cohesive and compelling narrative.
You're right. And it's a reminder that great literature can speak to us on multiple levels, engaging our minds, our emotions, and our imaginations in ways that transcend time and culture.
Okay, I want to talk about Dante's journey itself. He's not alone on this descent into hell. He has Virgil as his guide. What's the significance of having Virgil, a pagan poet, lead Dante through this Christian underworld?
That's a great question. The choice of Virgil as Dante's guide is highly symbolic. Virgil represents reason and classical learning, which were highly valued during the Renaissance period.
So Dante is essentially saying that reason and knowledge can guide us even in the darkest of places, even in hell.
Precisely. Virgil's presence suggests that human intellect has the power to illuminate even the most difficult and terrifying experiences. He's like a beacon of light, helping Dante navigate the treacherous landscape of hell and understand the meaning behind the punishments he witnesses.
But Virgil can only take Dante so far, right? He's a pagan, so he can't enter heaven.
That's right. Virgil represents the limits of human reason. He can guide Dante through hell and purgatory, but ultimately he can't lead him to salvation. For that, Dante needs divine grace, which is represented by Beatrice.
That makes sense. So Virgil is a bridge, a transitional figure who helps prepare Dante for his ultimate encounter with divine love.
Exactly. He's a symbol of the role that reason knowledge can play in our spiritual journeys. But he also highlights the need for something more, for a kind of transcendence that can only come from God.
It's a powerful message, suggesting that we need both reason and faith to navigate the complexities of life and death, and to find our way to ultimate truth.
And it reflects the tension that existed during Dante's time between the rediscovery of classical learning and the enduring power of Christian faith.
It's fascinating how Dante is able to weave together these different philosophical and theological strands into a compelling narrative.
He does. And it's a reminder that great literature can grapple with big ideas, challenging our assumptions and expanding our understanding of the world and ourselves.
Now, as Dante travels through hell, he encounters all sorts of terrifying creatures and demons. These encounters add a visceral element to the Inferno, making it feel all the more real and terrifying.
Dante's descriptions of these creatures are incredibly vivid and imaginative, drawing on a mix of classical mythology, biblical imagery, and his own creative genius.
For example, there's Charon, the ferryman who transports souls across the river Acheron. He's described as a grim old man with fiery eyes and a rough and shaggy beard.
Charon represents the inevitability of death and a transition from the world of the living to the realm of the dead. He's a figure who has appeared in literature and mythology for centuries, but Dante gives him a uniquely disturbing presence in the Inferno.
And then there's Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the entrance to the third circle, the realm of the gluttons. Dante describes him as having eyes of blood and a black beard, and he's constantly barking and howling with his three throats.
Cerberus embodies the insatiable hunger and greed associated with gluttony. He's a monstrous figure driven by primal instincts, representing the base desires that can consume the human soul.
It's a reminder that unchecked indulgence can lead to a kind of monstrous transformation, a loss of our humanity and our connection to the divine.
And those are just two examples. Dante populates hell with a whole menagerie of creatures, each more terrifying and grotesque than the last.
It's like a medieval horror movie with Dante as the protagonist, guided through this nightmare by Virgil.
You're right. And these encounters with monstrous creatures serve a symbolic purpose. They represent the different aspects of sin and the ways in which evil can manifest itself in the world.
And they add to the overall atmosphere of dread and despair that permeates the Inferno. It's a reminder that this is a journey into the darkest depths of human experience, a place where hope is scarce and the consequences of sin are eternal.
Precisely, Dante's use of these creatures is not just for shock value. It's a way of highlighting the gravity of sin and the terrifying reality of hell. He's using every tool at his disposal, including language, imagery, and symbolism, to create a world that feels both real and otherworldly, both familiar and utterly alien.
Now, you mentioned that Dante draws on classical mythology in his descriptions of hell. Can you give me some examples of how he incorporates those elements into the Inferno?
Absolutely. Dante was a scholar of classical literature, and he seamlessly integrates elements from Greek and Roman mythology into his depiction of the underworld.
For instance, he uses the names of several mythological figures, like Charon and Cerberus, to represent key aspects of hell.
Exactly. And he doesn't just borrow the names, he adapts those figures to fit his own Christian vision of hell.
Can you give me some more specific examples? I'm really curious to see how he blends these different traditions together.
Well, take the figure of Minos, judge of the damned. In Greek mythology, Minos was a king of Crete who, after his death, became a judge in the underworld.
So Dante is drawing on that tradition, but giving it a Christian twist.
Yes, in Dante's Inferno, Minos is still a judge, but he's assigned a specific role to determine which circle of hell each soul should be sent to based on their sins.
So he's more than just a judge, he's a gatekeeper, a bureaucratic figure who ensures the proper order and administration of hell's punishments.
Precisely. And his presence emphasizes the impersonal and impartial nature of divine justice.
There's no room for appeals or special treatment. Minos simply applies the rules, ensuring that each soul receives the punishment they deserve.
And then there are the Furies, those vengeful female deities from Greek mythology. In the Inferno, they appear in the sixth circle, the realm of heresy, adding to the sense of anger and torment that permeates that realm.
So they're not just mythological figures, they're active participants in hell's torments, embodying the rage and fury that can consume those who reject divine truth.
Exactly. Dante is weaving together these classical elements with his own Christian theology, creating a rich tapestry of imagery and symbolism that adds depth and complexity to the Inferno.
It's like he's drawing on a vast reservoir of cultural and literary knowledge to create a truly unique vision of hell.
He is. And it's a reminder that great works of literature are often built upon a foundation of earlier traditions, reimagining and reinterpreting those elements in new and compelling ways.
Dante's Inferno is a perfect example of how a writer can draw inspiration from the past while creating something entirely new and original.
And that's part of what makes it such a timeless and enduring work. It speaks to us across centuries, using familiar images and stories to explore profound truths about the human condition.
Now, I've heard that Dante also incorporates some pretty wild astronomical details into the Inferno. Can you tell me more about that?
You're right, Dante was a keen observer of the natural world, and he integrates astronomical observations into the Inferno to add a layer of realism and to create symbolic meaning.
So he's not just describing hell as a mythical place. He's grounding it in the physical world, using real astronomical phenomena to add to the sense of place and time.
Exactly. For example, in Canto 24, as Dante and Virgil are climbing out of the eighth circle, Dante notes the position of the stars and describes how the moon is waning, approaching its bed to sink again to rest.
That's a vivid detail.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of time passing, even in the timeless realm of hell. And it suggests that even in this underworld, the laws of nature still hold sway.
And it's not just about realism. Dante also uses astronomical imagery to create symbolic meaning. For example, in Canto 1, as Dante is lost in the dark woods, he describes how the sun is leading the heavens above, where God most his grace outpours.
That's interesting. The sun, a symbol of light and guidance, is associated with God's grace, which is absent in the dark woods where Dante finds himself.
Precisely. It's a subtle but significant detail, highlighting the contrast between the light of divine grace and the darkness of sin.
And it reinforces the idea that Dante's journey through hell is a symbolic representation of his own spiritual journey, a movement from darkness towards light.
You're catching on. Dante is a master of weaving together these different layers of meaning, using language, imagery, and symbolism to create a rich and multi-layered experience for the reader.
It's amazing how these details, which might seem insignificant at first glance, actually add so much depth and complexity to the Inferno.
That's the hallmark of a great writer. Dante is able to use even the smallest details to create a world that feels real, believable, and ultimately profoundly meaningful.
Now, as we delve deeper into the Inferno, I'm struck by the way Dante seems to humanize the souls he encounters. Even as he describes their punishments, he doesn't just present them as abstract representations of sin, he gives them stories, personalities, and even moments of empathy.
You're right. One of the things that makes Dante's Inferno so compelling is that he doesn't shy away from the humanity of the damned. He recognizes that even those who have committed terrible sins are still human beings, capable of suffering, regret, and even moments of grace.
For example, there's the story of Paolo and Francesca, the lovers trapped in the second circle for their sin of lust.
Their story is one of the most famous and poignant in the Inferno. Dante portrays them with great empathy, highlighting their love for each other even as he acknowledges the sin that led to their damnation.
He even allows Francesca to tell her own story, recounting how they fell in love while reading the story of Lancelot and Guinevere.
That detail is significant because it shows how literature can have a powerful influence on our emotions and actions. Paolo and Francesca's passion was ignited by a story, just as Dante's own journey is shaped by the stories he encounters in hell.
It's a reminder that stories have the power to both inspire and corrupt, to lead us towards virtue or to tempt us into sin.
And Dante's own journey through hell is a testament to the power of stories to transform us, to challenge our assumptions, and to lead us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
Another example of Dante's humanization of the damned is his encounter with Brunetto Latini, his former teacher, whom he finds among the sodomites in the Seventh Circle.
That encounter is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Despite Brunetto's sin, Dante still shows him great respect and affection, acknowledging the role he played in shaping Dante's own intellectual development.
Their conversation is filled with nostalgia and warmth, but there's also a sense of sadness and regret, as Dante realizes the eternal fate that awaits his former mentor.
It's a complex moment, highlighting the complexities of human relationships and the enduring power of love and respect, even in the face of sin and damnation.
It suggests that even those who have committed grave sins can still retain qualities that are worthy of admiration and even love.
And it challenges the idea that hell is a place of absolute evil and despair. Even in this realm of torment, there are moments of human connection, compassion, and even beauty.
Those moments make the Inferno all the more powerful because they remind us that even in the darkest depths of human experience, there are still glimmers of hope, grace, and humanity.
It's exactly. Dante's Inferno is not just a catalog of sins and punishments. It's a complex and nuanced exploration of the human condition, a testament to the enduring power of love, compassion, and the possibility of redemption, even in the face of eternal damnation.
I'm really starting to see why Dante's Inferno has resonated with readers for centuries. It's not just a story, it's a mirror reflecting back our own humanity, our own struggles, and our own search for meaning and redemption.
You're getting it. Dante's Inferno is a journey that invites us to confront our own darkness, to grapple with the complexities of good and evil, and to consider the ultimate consequences of our choices. It's a timeless and powerful work that continues to challenge, inspire, and provoke us centuries after it was written.
As we continue our exploration of the Inferno, I want to focus on something that's been on my mind: Dante's own emotional journey. He doesn't just observe the suffering of the damned, he reacts to it with a range of emotions, from pity and compassion to fear and even anger.
You're right. Dante's journey through hell is not just a physical one. It's also a deeply emotional experience. He allows himself to be affected by the sights, sounds, and stories he encounters. And his emotional responses are a key part of what makes the Inferno so powerful and engaging.
For example, early in the journey, when he encounters the souls of the unbaptized in limbo, he's overcome with pity. He describes them as sighs, complaints, and ululations loud that resounded through the starless air.
That sense of sadness and pity is palpable in Dante's writing. He recognizes the suffering of these souls, who are denied the presence of God, not because of their own wickedness, but because of circumstances beyond their control.
It raises questions about the nature of divine justice and the fate of those who, through no fault of their own, are excluded from salvation.
And highlights Dante's own compassion. He's not just a detached observer. He's a human being who is moved by the suffering of others, even those who are condemned to hell.
But Dante doesn't just feel pity, he also experiences fear, especially in the early stages of his journey.
Remember his encounter with the three beasts at the very beginning, the leopard, the lion, and the she-wolf. Those beasts represent different forms of sin that threaten to overwhelm Dante. And his fear is palpable as he describes them.
That fear is a natural response to the horrors of hell, and it makes Dante's journey all the more relatable. He's not some fearless hero. He's a human being facing his own fears and confronting the darkest aspects of human nature.
Exactly. And his fear is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of his humanity. It's what makes him relatable to us as readers, who might also feel fear and trepidation when confronting our own inner demons.
And as Dante descends deeper into hell, his emotions become even more complex. He experiences anger, disgust, and even a kind of morbid fascination with the punishments he witnesses.
Remember his encounter with the wrathful in the Fifth Circle, those who are trapped in the swamp of Styx, forever fighting and attacking each other.
That scene is incredibly visceral, with Dante describing the turbid waves and the clangor of a sound with terror fraught.
And Dante's own reaction is one of disgust and even anger. He's repulsed by the violence and hatred that he witnesses, and he's angry at the sinners for allowing their rage to consume them.
It's a reminder that anger, while a natural human emotion, can be destructive if left unchecked. It can lead to violence, hatred, and ultimately to spiritual ruin.
And Dante's own anger in this scene is a sign of his own moral compass. He's not just passively observing sin, he's actively judging it, condemning it, and even feeling righteous anger at its presence.
But there are also moments when Dante seems almost fascinated by the punishments he witnesses, even as he recognizes their horror.
That's a complex element of the Inferno. Dante is both horrified and fascinated by the ingenuity of the punishments, the way they reflect the nature of the sin in a tangible and often grotesque way.
It's like he's simultaneously repelled and drawn to the spectacle of suffering, recognizing the justice of the punishments while also being disturbed by their severity.
That tension is part of what makes the Inferno so compelling. It's a journey into the darkest depths of human experience, a place where the line between justice and cruelty, between punishment and spectacle, can become blurred.
And Dante's own emotional responses are a guide for the reader, helping us navigate these complex and often disturbing emotions.
You're right, Dante's Inferno is not just about the sins and punishments of others. It's also about our own capacity for good and evil, our own emotional responses to suffering, and our own search for meaning and redemption in a world that can often feel dark and chaotic.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the horrors of hell, but there's also a sense of hope running through the Inferno. Dante himself is allowed to journey through this underworld, guided by Virgil, and he eventually emerges into the light of Purgatory. What's the significance of this hopeful element within such a dark and terrifying narrative?
That's a crucial point. Despite the darkness and despair that permeate the Inferno, Dante never loses sight of the possibility of hope and redemption. His own journey through hell is, in itself, a testament to the possibility of grace and transformation.
So even though he's witnessing the consequences of sin, he's also being given a chance to learn, to grow, and to ultimately find his way back to God.
Exactly. Dante's journey is a symbolic representation of the Christian belief that even those who have strayed from the path of righteousness can find their way back to God through repentance and purification.
And Virgil, his guide, is a symbol of that possibility. He represents reason and knowledge which can help us understand the nature of sin and guide us towards a better path.
Virgil's presence suggests that even in the darkest of places, there's still a glimmer of light, a possibility of finding our way out of the darkness.
But Virgil can only take Dante so far, right? He's a pagan, so he can't enter heaven.
That's right. Virgil represents the limits of human reason. He can guide Dante through hell and purgatory, but ultimately he can't lead him to salvation. For that, Dante needs divine grace, which is represented by Beatrice.
That makes sense. So Virgil is a bridge, a transitional figure who helps prepare Dante for his ultimate encounter with divine love.
Exactly. He's a symbol of the role that reason and knowledge can play in our spiritual journeys, but he also highlights the need for something more, for a kind of transcendence that can only come from God.
And that's where Beatrice comes in, right? She represents divine love and grace, leading Dante towards his ultimate salvation.
Precisely, Beatrice is Dante's muse, his inspiration, and his guide to the divine. She represents the transformative power of love and the possibility of reaching heaven through God's grace.
So even though the Inferno is filled with darkness and horror, there's this underlying message of hope and redemption.
Absolutely. Dante's journey through hell is not just about punishment. It's also about the possibility of transformation, the journey from darkness towards light, from sin towards grace.
It's a reminder that even in the face of our own failings and the horrors of the world, there's always a chance for redemption, a possibility of finding our way back to the divine.
Beautifully said. And that message of hope is what makes Dante's Inferno such a powerful and enduring work. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of light, a possibility of finding a way back to the source of all love and goodness.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the structure, the symbolism, the characters, and the emotional journey of Dante's Inferno. But what about its impact? Why has this poem resonated with readers for centuries? What makes it so enduring?
That's a great question. Dante's Inferno has had a profound and lasting impact on literature, art, and even our understanding of the human condition. It's a work that continues to resonate with readers today for several reasons.
I'm eager to hear your insights. What makes this poem so timeless and impactful?
First, Dante's vivid imagery and powerful language create a truly immersive experience. He paints a picture of hell that is both terrifying and unforgettable, using sensory details, metaphors, and similes to bring this underworld to life.
It's like he's taking us on a journey through hell alongside Dante, allowing us to experience the sights, sounds, and even the smells of this terrifying realm.
Exactly. And that visceral experience makes the Inferno all the more powerful and memorable.
It's not just an abstract theological treatise. It's a journey through the senses, a descent into the darkest depths of the human imagination.
And second, Dante's exploration of sin and punishment is both timeless and universally relevant. He taps into our deepest fears and anxieties about the consequences of our actions, the nature of good and evil, and the possibility of an afterlife.
He's not just describing the sins of his time. He's exploring the fundamental flaws of human nature, the temptations that can lead us astray, and the consequences of our choices.
Precisely. And that's what makes the Inferno resonate across cultures and centuries. We all struggle with temptation, we all make mistakes, and we all wonder about the ultimate meaning of our lives and the possibility of an afterlife.
Dante's Inferno gives us a framework for understanding those questions, a language for grappling with our own darkness, and a reminder that even in the face of our failings, there's always a possibility of hope and redemption.
Beautifully said. And third, Dante's masterful use of allegory and symbolism adds layers of meaning to the Inferno. He's not just telling a story, he's using the journey through hell as a metaphor for the spiritual journey of the individual soul. The process of confronting our sins, seeking forgiveness, and ultimately finding our way back to God.
That allegorical element makes the Inferno so much more than just a horror story. It's a profound exploration of the human condition, a guide for the soul, and a testament to the enduring power of hope and redemption.
And finally, Dante's Inferno has had a profound influence on Western culture and art. It has inspired countless writers, artists, musicians, and filmmakers who have drawn on its imagery, symbolism, and characters to explore their own visions of hell and the human condition.
From Botticelli's illustrations of the Inferno to Rodin's sculpture of the Gates of Hell, from Milton's Paradise Lost to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, the Inferno has left an indelible mark on the Western imagination.
It's a testament to the enduring power of Dante's vision that it continues to inspire and provoke us centuries after it was written. The Inferno is not just a poem, it's a cultural touchstone, a work that continues to shape our understanding of ourselves, the world, and the eternal questions that have haunted humanity since the beginning of time.
Now, as we're nearing the end of our deep dive into Dante's Inferno, I'm struck by the fact that he wrote this poem while he was in exile, banished from his beloved Florence. How do you think that experience of exile shaped his vision of hell?
That's a fascinating question. Dante's own experience of exile undoubtedly influenced his writing of the Inferno. He was forced to leave his home, his family, and his political position, and he lived the rest of his life as a wanderer, longing for a return to Florence that never came.
So he knew firsthand what it felt like to be separated from everything he loved, to be cast out and condemned.
Exactly. And that sense of loss, isolation, and longing permeates the Inferno. Dante's hell is a place of exile where souls are cut off from God, from their loved ones, and from the hope of salvation.
It's a place of eternal punishment, but it's also a place of profound loneliness and isolation, reflecting Dante's own experience of being banished from his homeland.
And Dante's portrayal of the damned often reflects his own political and personal conflicts. He places his enemies in hell, condemning them to eternal torment. And he even uses the Inferno to settle scores and to express his own bitterness and anger at those who wronged him.
So the Inferno is not just an abstract theological treatise. It's also a deeply personal work, shaped by Dante's own experiences, emotions, and even his grudges.
Precisely. The Inferno is a complex and multi-layered work, blending theological, philosophical, political, and personal elements into a powerful and enduring vision of hell.
It's a reminder that great literature is often rooted in the lived experiences of the writer, drawing on their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears, to create works that resonate with readers across time and cultures.
You're right. And Dante's Inferno is a powerful testament to the transformative power of literature, the way it can allow us to explore the darkest depths of human experience, to confront our own demons, and to find meaning and even hope in the face of suffering and despair.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive into Dante's Inferno, I want to leave you with a thought. Dante's journey through hell is a journey of discovery, not just of the underworld, but also of himself.
You're right. As Dante descends deeper into hell, he's not just witnessing the punishments of the damned, he's also confronting his own weaknesses, his own temptations, and his own capacity for sin.
He's forced to examine his own life, his own choices, and his own relationship with God.
It's a process of self-reflection,
Yeah.
of confronting our own darkness, and of seeking a path towards redemption.
And that journey is not just about Dante. It's a journey that he invites the reader to share. As we follow Dante through hell, we too are challenged to confront our own inner demons, to examine our own lives, and to seek a path towards a more virtuous and fulfilling existence.
Beautifully put, Dante's Inferno is not just a story. It's a mirror, reflecting back our own humanity, our own struggles, and our own potential for both good and evil. It's a timeless and powerful work that continues to challenge and inspire us centuries after it was written.
Well, this deep dive into Dante's Inferno has been an incredible journey. We've explored the structure, the symbolism, the characters, the punishments, and the emotional journey of this timeless masterpiece. We've seen how Dante uses language, imagery, and allegory to create a world that is both terrifying and profound, both horrifying and strangely beautiful.
It's a work that challenges us to confront our own darkness, to grapple with the complexities of good and evil, and to consider the eternal consequences of our choices.
And it reminds us that even in the darkest depths of hell, there's always a glimmer of hope, a possibility of redemption, and a chance to find our way back to the light of God's grace.
Dante's Inferno is a timeless testament to the power of literature, to explore the deepest questions of human existence, to challenge our assumptions, to expand our understanding of ourselves and the world, and to offer us a glimpse of both the horrors and the possibilities that lie beyond this earthly life.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to revisit Dante's work with fresh eyes, to delve deeper into its layers of meaning, and to discover new insights into this timeless masterpiece. What about you? What has resonated with you most about Dante's Inferno? What questions has it raised for you?
I encourage you to explore those questions, to discuss them with others, and to allow Dante's journey to continue to challenge and inspire you. The Inferno is a work that has something to offer everyone, regardless of their background, beliefs, or experiences. It's a journey into the human heart, a testament to the power of language, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and redemption are always possible.
Well said. And with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into Dante's Inferno. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this timeless masterpiece with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep Dante's journey in your mind and heart.